Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is Jack, and tonight I have some new stories for you. If you enjoy my videos, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's get started.
My phone starts buzzing at 10:40 at night while I am standing at the sink with a coffee mug in one hand and the faucet running. The screen shows the Public Works on-call line. I let it vibrate once, shut the water off, and answer. Carl from dispatch talks fast and sounds annoyed, not scared. He says lift station 9 tripped its alarm again, the reset failed, and the night plant crew is short one man. He wants me to check the intake, clear any blockage, and call back if the motor is gone. I tell him I am heading out. He says, make it quick, then hangs up before I do. I set the mug down, pull on my work boots, grab my tool bag from the hall closet, and lock my front door behind me. I do not text my mother. She lives across town, goes to bed early, and will only ask why the city needs me at this hour again. Bell Creek is not a big place, but it is big enough to trap you if the roads turn bad. The river cuts through the middle, and most people talk about the town in halves. The east side has the hospital, chain stores, newer neighborhoods, and the courthouse. The west side has old houses, feedlots, the rail spur, warehouses, and the public works yard. Two bridges matter. The highway bridge moves most of the traffic. The old bridge takes local cars, delivery vans, and anyone trying to dodge the highway. My mother lives on the east side in a narrow duplex near the pharmacy on Mercer. I am on the west side in a rented place near the grain silos. My pickup starts on the second turn. The tank is a little under half. I toss my bag onto the passenger seat, back into the alley, and head south toward the river. The town feels normal in the loose way late nights always do. A bar near Franklin is letting out. Two men are arguing in the parking lot outside a taco place. A woman is walking fast with her shoes in one hand. The local station has a talk show host filling time, with callers complaining about the hospital wait and some rumor from the county jail. He laughs it off, says flu season makes people dramatic, then cuts to a tire ad. I keep driving. Lift Station 9 sits low behind a fence near the cottonwoods by the riverbank. It is a concrete block building with two pumps below grade, a service hatch over the wet well, and one old floodlight over the side door. I turn down the access road and see the gate hanging open before my headlights reach the building. The padlock is there, but the latch is bent. I park with the nose facing out. That is habit. If I need to leave fast, I do not want to waste time backing around in a tight apron by the ditch. The floodlight above the door is on. Moths keep hitting the bulb and dropping to the concrete. The side door is cracked open 2 inches. I take my flashlight from the bag and walk in without flipping the main lights. The alarm panel inside is chirping every few seconds. There is blood on the floor. Not much, but enough to tell me somebody got hurt in here. A phone lies face up by the wall, with the screen broken and a red emergency alert banner frozen under the glass. The speaker is damaged. A clipped voice keeps coming in and out so badly, I cannot make out the full warning. I call out for Ruben Salcedo, since this route is his on nights when I am off. I hear a metal thump from the electrical room, then his voice telling me to shut the door. Ruben is crouched behind the spare parts cabinet with his left forearm wrapped in a torn shirt. His face is slick with sweat and grease. One boot is missing. His radio is clipped to his belt, but the battery light is dead. He says a man came over the fence while he was checking the float control. Ruben thought the man was drunk. When he stepped closer, the man lunged at his neck and tried to bite him. Ruben shoved him off, slipped on the lower stairs, and ripped his arm open on the cabinet edge when he scrambled back up. He says the man fell through the access hatch into the wet well room after bouncing off the rail. He heard the ladder banging from below after that. Then he heard somebody else at the side door. He keeps calling them sick. He says it with a hard voice, as if he is trying to make the word fit what he saw and it does not. I ask if he got bit. He swears at me and shows me the cut on his forearm. It is a clean tear from metal, not teeth. Blood has soaked through the shirt strip. I tell him he needs pressure on it and a doctor. He tells me the pump room hatch is open and the lower motor fault is active. The concrete floor is wet, which means the station is backing up already. My first thought is automatic. Get the hatch shut, secure the site. Then I hear the ladder strike the concrete lip again, harder this time. Ruben flinches. I take the pry bar from my bag and step into the pump room. The hatch is half open. I angle the flashlight down through the gap. The beam catches the ladder platform, moving water below, and a man staring upward with his cheek torn open and his mouth working with no words coming out. One hand grips the rail, the other keeps clawing at the edge, slipping and scraping the concrete. He throws himself up harder when the light hits his face. His head clears the opening, his fingers hook the lip. I bring the pry bar down across his knuckles without thinking. He drops to the ladder and bangs shoulder first into the wall. Ruben backs away so fast he hits the cabinet and sends a wrench across the floor. The sound rings through the station. Something slams the side door from outside. Then it hits again. I do not try to fix the pumps. I shove the hatch down, ram the locking pin through, and jam the pry bar through the pull bracket. The man below starts hammering upward. The hatch jumps under each hit. The side door bangs twice more and pushes wider against the bent frame. Ruben is already moving toward the exit. I grab my bag, shove him out ahead of me, and shoulder the front door open. We clear the fence gate, and I yank it shut on the chain, though the bent latch barely catches. A woman in a nightgown is crawling by the drainage ditch at the edge of the apron. One ankle is folded under her in a way no leg should bend. She drags herself toward us with both hands, chin and chest slick with mud and blood. She makes no words. Her mouth opens and closes while she pulls forward. When my truck lights sweep over her, she turns at once and starts coming faster, using her arms. Ruben reaches the passenger side and fumbles the handle twice before he gets in. I run around the hood, get behind the wheel, and back out hard enough to throw gravel into the ditch. The woman disappears behind the curve within seconds. Ruben keeps pressing his wrapped arm and asks me what those people are. I say I do not know. I say maybe drugs, maybe something from the jail, maybe a head injury. None of it fits what I saw. I drive faster. Ruben wants the emergency room. I tell him we will pass the hospital on the way in and decide there. When we get close, I do not need to decide. Cars are jammed across both entrance lanes. A security guard is trying to close one set of sliding doors while two men pound on the glass from outside. Another man in hospital scrubs is running across the lot with no bag, no coat, nothing in his hands. Somebody falls between the parked cars and does not get up. Two people rush in to pull her out, then one of them jerks backward as if somebody grabbed his face. A siren is going off from an ambulance with both back doors open. The whole lot is moving in pieces. No line, no order. Ruben looks through the windshield, goes quiet, then says, "Do not stop here." I keep driving past the hospital with my foot steady on the gas and my hands tight on the wheel. The public works main plant is closer than my place, and it sits behind a gate with floodlights and concrete barriers. I head there first. Luis Ortega is in the control room with another operator and the night electrician. He takes one look at Ruben and gets a clean towel wrapped around his arm before I even speak. I tell them what happened at lift station 9. Nobody argues with me or laughs it off. Luis says the plant has been getting odd inflow spikes for 2 hours, and that the police channel has turned into overlapping calls from the east side. The electrician says his wife texted him that the county alert system sent a shelter notice, then sent a second one telling people to avoid public buildings. He holds up his phone. The messages are real. They are also useless. Ruben sits on a stool, pale and angry, while Luis tapes the towel tighter. I ask Carl on the office line what is going on. I get a busy tone 3 times in a row, then nothing at all. I try my mother next. The call hangs, drops, then fails. I send a text telling her to lock the door and keep the lights off. My sister June lives in Tulsa. She answers on the second ring when I call her, which surprises me at this hour. I tell her I cannot reach Mum. June says the news is showing scenes from cities 2 states away, and the anchors keep using different words for the same thing. Riot, illness, attack, containment. She tells me not to go anywhere crowded. I tell her Mum is alone on the east side and I am going to get her. June says, use the old bridge if I can. Then the call starts cutting out. I hear her say my name once, then the line goes dead. Luis tells me I can leave Ruben with him and head out now, before both bridges clog. I grab 2 bottled waters from the break room, shove them into my jacket and head back to my truck. The drive to the highway bridge takes 15 minutes on a normal night. It takes almost 30 now. Traffic is heavier than it should be. A lot of people are moving east, away from the warehouses and the old neighborhoods. A lot of other people are headed west, away from the hospital district and the stores. Nobody knows where to go, only that the last place felt bad enough to leave. I get to the bridge ramp at 12:20 and pass a police cruiser angled across one lane with both lights flashing. One officer is out of the car yelling at drivers to keep moving and not stop. Another officer is bent over a man on the shoulder. I cannot tell if she is helping him or holding him down. I do not slow enough to study it. I cross the river under sodium lights and see 3 cars stopped on the far side with doors open and nobody inside. One is running with the driver's door wide open. My mother's duplex sits on a narrow street behind a closed strip mall, with a pharmacy on the corner and an empty movie theater at the other end. By the time I pull up, most porch lights are out. A few windows are bright. Somebody is yelling somewhere farther down the block. I pound on Mum's door until she opens it with the chain still on. She is in house shoes and a robe, looking annoyed first, then worried when she sees my face. She asks what happened. I tell her we are leaving now. She says no, not until she gets her insulin from the pharmacy in the morning. I step inside, shut the door, and tell her morning may not look better. She says I always make things sound worse than they are. Then the power blinks once, comes back, and the television in her bedroom turns on by itself from the outlet surge. A news anchor is talking over shaky phone video of people running through a grocery store. The banner on screen says, "Public emergency." Mum stares at it, then turns back to me and says, "Give her 5 minutes." 5 minutes turns into 15. She wants papers, her wallet, the framed photo of my father, 2 sweaters, the pill case from the kitchen, and the insulated lunch bag she uses for her insulin. I tell her to take what fits in one tote and leave the rest. She tells me not to order her around in her own house. I get the tote open on the sofa and start loading it in plain sight so she sees the limit. Phone charger, flashlight, insurance cards, spare glasses, 2 bottles of water, granola bars, the insulin in the fridge. I ask how much she has. She says 3 pens and some strips, which gives her days, not weeks. While she packs, I walk the duplex and shut every blind. The neighbor in the next unit, Gary Pike, is pounding on somebody's door across the street and yelling for his wife. Another voice is yelling from inside that house. A woman screams once, sharp and sudden, then the sound cuts off. I move away from the window and lock the back door. We are not out fast enough. Something hits the shared hallway wall with enough force to shake the framed pictures by the coat rack. Then, there is a heavy scraping sound right outside the front door, and Gary starts shouting my mother's name through the wood. His voice is high and broken. Mom reaches for the chain. I grab her wrist and shake my head. Gary pounds again, then the pounding changes. It turns uneven, more like repeated slamming with a shoulder or both hands. Another impact hits the neighboring door on the other side of the hall. I kill the front room lamp and motion Mum toward the back. The kitchen window faces the small, fenced yard and the alley. I slide it up, knock the screen out, and set the tote on the sill. Mom is stiff and slow climbing through. I push the tote after her, then go back for the insulin lunch bag and her shoes. Something cracks at the front of the duplex. The chain tears free with a sharp metal snap. I do not go back for anything else. The alley is dark. I get Mom into the passenger seat and pull away with the headlights off until I clear the block. She keeps looking back at her duplex. I do not. I take Mercer toward the old bridge, since the highway bridge will be worse by now. We make it 6 blocks before traffic locks tight. Cars are angled across both lanes, horns blaring. People are out on foot, banging on hoods, shouting at strangers to move. Up ahead, I see the dull wash of emergency lights bouncing off storefronts and windshields. I inch forward until I can see the bridge approach itself. 2 cars have collided nose first in the narrow lane, where the road bends onto the span. Another truck sits half across the sidewalk rail, with steam pouring from under the hood. A woman is running along the left shoulder with blood down one leg. A man catches her by the jacket from behind, pulls her backward, and buries his face against her neck while both of them fall against the guardrail. The traffic around us starts reversing at once. I throw the truck into reverse before the car behind me does the same. We miss each other by inches. Somebody hits my tailgate with bare hands. Mom asks where we are going, and I tell her away from the bridge first, then somewhere with walls and elevation. She tells me the pharmacy on Mercer has a backup generator for the insulin cases, and that she needs more than what she took. I say I know. I cut through side streets, scrape a trash can, jump a curb, and aim for the pharmacy strip. Half the town seems to have the same idea. The whole block is lit by broken glass, emergency strobes, and the storefront signs that have not gone dark yet. The pharmacy front doors are smashed. People are running in and out with bags and armloads of whatever they can grab. A man in pajama pants is dragging a rolling basket from the beauty aisle down the sidewalk. 2 women are fighting over bottled water on the curb. I keep driving past. The urgent care clinic sits behind the pharmacy in a brick building with a staff lot and a side entrance used for supply deliveries. That door is partly open. I swing into the lot and kill the engine. The clinic looks dark from the front, but a small backup light glows in the rear hall. Mom stays in the truck. I take the pry bar and go in through the side. A woman in blue scrubs nearly swings a fire extinguisher into my head before she realizes I am not coming at her. She is about my age, hair tied back with the elastic half out, face streaked with sweat and dust. She tells me to say my name before I step into blind corners. I tell her my name. She says hers is Renee Park and asks if I am bleeding. I say no. She lowers the extinguisher and says she is trying to clear out cold storage meds before the power quits for good. But one of the interior doors jammed, and half the clinic staff ran out without the keys. I tell Renee my mother needs insulin and test strips. She looks past me toward the lot, sees Mum in the truck, and gives me a short nod. Then she says the main insulin stock at the pharmacy will already be gone or warming. The clinic kept a small reserve in the vaccine cooler. She has 2 insulated packs and 1 lockbox with emergency meds. But the second lockbox is in the supply room behind the jammed door. I use the pry bar on the frame while Renee braces the handle. The door opens after 3 hard hits that split the wood near the latch. Inside, the backup cooler is humming, though the display is flashing low-voltage warnings. Renee moves fast, packing insulin pens, syringes, sealed swabs, glucose tablets, strips, and a few vials for patients who cannot use pens. She leaves most of the other drugs. She says grab what keeps a person upright, not what sounds good to have. I help her fill a small, hard cooler and a canvas medical bag. We hear pounding from the front lobby before we finish. Not one person, more than one. The glass breaks a second later. Renee snaps the cooler shut, slings the bag over her shoulder, and says, "We leave now." We cut through the staff room, out the back loading door, and circle to my truck. 2 men come around the far side of the building as we reach it. One is limping. The other has blood over his chin and shirt. The limping man is calling for help. The other man is moving with him. Then suddenly he is not helping at all. He grabs the limping man by the coat and drives him against a parked sedan. The limping man tries to fend him off and slips to the ground. I do not stand there sorting out what started it. I shove the cooler into the back seat, pull the rear door closed behind Renee, and get in. One of the men sees us and starts toward the truck. I drive over the curb to get clear. We make it 3 blocks before a patrol SUV blocks the intersection. Officer Kira Bell is out in the street with her sidearm drawn, waving traffic toward the Civic Center on Grant. She looks at the cooler in my back seat, then at my mother, then at Renee, and asks if either of us has room for an elderly man from the apartment fire on Pine. I look past her and see smoke lifting above the rooftops behind the strip mall. A crowd is moving down Grant toward the Civic Center, carrying bags, blankets, pet crates, grocery carts, whatever they had time to grab. Kira says the arena has generators and county aid on the way. She says people need to stop driving in circles and get behind secure doors. Renee says crowded shelter is a bad idea if these attacks keep happening. Kira snaps back that open streets are worse. Then her radio goes loud with overlapping calls, and she turns away before I can answer. I do not go to the arena yet. I head north toward the municipal yard on Elm Ridge, thinking fences, locked bays, service trucks, tools, and maybe a place to sit out the night until the city gets a grip on this. On the way, Mum's hand starts shaking. She says her blood sugar is dropping. I pass her the glucose tablets Renee packed. Renee checks the label on Mum's pen and asks when she last ate, Mum says dinner at 6. I hand her one of the bottled waters and a pack of crackers from my glove box. The roads are thinning now. Most of the moving traffic is pointed toward the arena or the highway. When I reach the municipal yard, the front gate is open and one of the yard trucks is half through the fence where somebody clipped the corner post. A loading dock door is hanging open. I do not get out. If the yard has already been torn through, I do not want to learn how many people are inside by walking into the dark. There is one place on the North Ridge that makes more sense than the yard, and it comes to me once I stop trying to treat the night like an ordinary emergency call. The water tower service building sits up a maintenance road behind a locked chain gate above the neighborhood. It is not a shelter. It is one cinder block building with a garage bay, a narrow office, a fenced utility pad, and the tower itself. I have the gate key on my ring from winter valve checks. The road up is steep and badly patched. Nobody uses it unless they work for the city. If we can get there before somebody else thinks of it, we get elevation. One way in, one way out, and access to non-potable utility water through the maintenance hookups if the pressure crashes. I turn onto the ridge road. Halfway up, we pass a minivan sitting sideways across a driveway with both rear doors open and nobody near it. A little farther, a boy bangs on my hood with both hands and points behind a tipped trash bin. I hit the brakes, and the boy runs to the passenger side, pulling a girl along with him. He looks around 16. She is maybe 12. Both are dirty, out of breath, and carrying school backpacks. The boy says his name is Jace Pritchard, and the girl is his sister Holly. He says their aunt ran inside when a man from the next house started attacking people in the yard, and never came back out. He saw my truck climbing the hill, and ran for it. I do not want extra people in the cab. I also do not want to leave them in the road with whatever is moving up the slope behind us. I tell them in, fast. Jace shoves Holly into the back seat beside the cooler, gets in after her, and pulls the door shut right as a man steps out from behind the parked minivan and starts stumbling toward us with one arm hanging loose. I do not wait for more. I drive. The chain gate at the water tower is closed. My hands shake only enough to slow me a little on the key ring. The key goes in on the second try. I pull the truck through, stop long enough to jump out and drag the gate shut behind us, then keep going up to the service building. The garage bay is locked. The office door sticks from the damp in spring and never seals right unless you lift it while you turn the key. I do that, get us inside, and pull the door shut. The building smells like dust, old coffee, and pipe sealant. It is not comfortable, but it is solid. One desk, 2 metal chairs, shelves with valve records, a mop sink, an electrical panel, and a narrow storeroom in back. I use the battery lantern from the emergency shelf instead of the overhead lights. The tower hums faintly through the wall. Mum sits in the chair by the desk and looks older than she did an hour ago. Holly starts crying without making any sound. Jace wraps both arms around her and keeps watch at the window. I shut every blind in the office and check the garage. There is a spool of caution tape, a hand truck, a crate of pipe couplings, 2 worn shovels, 1 sledgehammer, gloves, and a coil of nylon rope. No miracle stash, no generator, no food. The maintenance sink still has pressure, which means the system is holding for now. I fill every bottle we have, then find 2 plastic sample jugs in a cabinet, rinse them, and fill those too. Renee inventories the medical bag, while I move the shelves in the storeroom to clear floor space. Mom asks how long we are staying. I tell her through dawn at least, maybe longer if the roads do not clear. Jace asks if his aunt can find us here. I tell him I do not know. That answer lands hard, but lying would only buy quiet for a few minutes. We make a place on the floor with drop cloths and a stack of survey vests from the closet. Nobody sleeps much. We hear engines on the ridge road below, then shouting, then one shot, then silence that lasts long enough to make each new sound stand out twice. Around 3 in the morning, something starts scraping against the chain gate down the hill. It is too irregular to be the wind. I kill the lantern and stand at the slit between the blinds with my flashlight off. In the thin spill from the town below, I see a man at the gate, leaning hard into the chain link with both hands. He is alone. He keeps pressing and dragging his shoulder along the metal. A few minutes later, a second figure comes out of the dark and joins him. Neither figure looks up toward the tower. They keep pushing the gate and rattling the latch. The gate holds. Jace whispers that we should go down and stop them. I tell him no. We do nothing that makes noise unless the gate opens. By morning, the second figure is gone. The first one is caught in the fence by his jacket sleeve, hanging against the chain with his weight pulling the metal inward. He makes a dry, rough sound now and then. More effort than voice. The town below looks half empty and half broken. Smoke rises from two places. Traffic on the main road is thin and fast or not moving at all. The power blinks once in the service building, then holds. Renee checks Mum's sugar, gives her insulin, and tells me we need a colder place for the spare pens by tonight if the refrigerator units across town fail and the day warms up. I ask how long what we have will last. She says if we are careful, maybe a little over a week for Mum. Less if any pen gets too warm. She says the rest of the medicine is basic wound care, a few antibiotics, and supplies to keep small problems from turning into bigger ones. Jace asks if school will open. Nobody answers him. I set rules before anybody starts assuming this place is safe. No lights in the windows after dark. No shouting. No opening the office door without telling the room first. No flushing the mop sink with trash in it. Every bit of food waste gets sealed in bags. Hands washed after we touch the outside latch, the floor by the door, or any clothing with blood on it. Holly asks why the hand-washing part matters if this is not airborne. Renee says saliva and blood are enough. She says it flat and direct. Jace looks at her and asks how she knows. She tells him she watched one patient bite an orderly on the wrist in triage, and that orderly collapsed with fever within hours. Another patient died from a head injury and got back up on a trauma bed before anybody even finished clearing the room. She does not raise her voice. She does not need to. Jace nods and keeps quiet after that. The main pressure starts dropping before noon. The sink sputters once, then steadies, but the force is weaker. That tracks with what I am seeing across town. Either people are drawing every line dry, or the pump staffing has fallen apart, or both. I cannot sit on the ridge and pretend the system will run by itself. If the pressure collapses, the whole town will start grabbing from whatever water is left, clean or not. I tell Renee and Mum I'm going to the main plant and the nearby maintenance sheds for fuel, tools, and any sealed food that got left in lockers. Mum says she is coming. I tell her no. She says she will not wait up here while I vanish into a town full of sick people. Then she looks at Holly, at Jace, and at the single door between us and the ridge road, and she changes her mind without saying it out loud. Jace asks to come with me. I tell him he stays and watches the gate. I take the pickup down the maintenance road with the engine off for the last stretch, rolling the truck until the slope runs out before I start it again. The figure caught in the chain gate is gone. The sleeve tore free. The road down into town is scattered with abandoned cars, but there are enough gaps to snake through if I stay off the main routes. At the plant, the front barrier is closed, and one city truck is parked sideways across the approach. Luis steps out from behind it with a pipe wrench in one hand. When he sees it is me, he drops the wrench and comes over. He looks 10 years older than he did a few hours ago. He says half the crew left to get family. The other half either never made it in or are locked in separate sections. Carl is gone. No note. Ruben started running a fever and talking nonsense before dawn, then tried to get out of the control room after Luis taped the door shut on him. I ask if Ruben turned the same way as the people at the lift station. Luis looks at me, looks away, and says he watched the security camera feed from the hallway. Ruben stopped pacing, sat against the wall for a while, then went quiet. About 12 minutes later, he stood up again and started hitting the door with both hands until the camera went dark. Luis has not opened that room since. He says the plant can keep primary flow moving for a few more hours if the intake pumps hold. Then he shrugs at the rest of the sentence and lets it die. We load what matters. 2 5-gallon fuel cans from the maintenance rack. A box of water treatment tablets used for field crews. Bottled water. A carton of meal replacement bars from the break room cabinet. 2 flashlights. Spare batteries. Rope. Hand cleaner. Luis grabs a set of bolt cutters and a short-handled sledge. I tell him I have room at the tower. He says he is not leaving yet. The west trunk line is near overflow, and the screens need clearing one more time. I tell him he is wasting himself for a town that is already coming apart. He says, maybe, but if the sewer backs into the low neighborhoods by afternoon, the next problem arrives before the first one is done. He is right, and I hate that he is right. I tell him I am heading back before the roads close tighter. Then I stop and ask him one more thing. I ask if he has heard anything clear on the bridges. Luis says the highway bridge is blocked on the east approach with a pile-up, and at least one transport truck burned out near the center lane. The old bridge is jammed with abandoned cars and people trying to cross on foot. He says one officer on the plant radio claimed the guard was setting a perimeter south of town. Then another voice said the guard checkpoint got overrun before sunrise. No one knows what to trust. I leave with the truck heavier and my options thinner. On the way back up the ridge, I cut through Mercer again to look at Mum's duplex from the corner. The front door is hanging open. The hallway wall is streaked dark near the switch plate. The house across the street has its drapes torn down and the front window broken out. A man is walking barefoot down the middle of the road with his shirt half off and one hand pressed to his stomach. He does not look at my truck when I pass. I do not stop. Near Grant, traffic is moving toward the arena in a slow crawl. County buses are unloading people at the side lot. Kira Bell is there again, directing them with a flashlight and a voice that sounds rougher than it did a few hours ago. When she spots my city pickup, she flags me over. She asks if I can help move cases of bottled water from a box truck to the loading dock. I tell her I have a diabetic mother on the ridge and no safe place for her if I burn this daylight in a crowd. Kira looks tired enough to snap, but she only nods once and says, if I change my mind, shelter intake is still open. Back at the tower, I find two things waiting for me. The first is good. The chain gate is intact and Jace kept the office dark. The second is not. There is a paper note jammed through the latch at the door. It says, water or food. 4 people, please. No name, no threats. Only that. Mum wants to take something down to them. I tell her if we open the gate for one group, 5 more groups will hear about it by dark. She says people on the ridge know this tower building exists already. She is not wrong. I say the note proves they know enough to ask. It does not prove they know enough to force the gate. Renee backs me up. She says crowds turn this place into a waiting room, then a trap. Mum hates hearing that, and shows it by going quiet. I do not like saying no to hungry people with my own mother watching me do it, but I do it anyway. By late afternoon, the power drops for good. The overheads blink twice, then everything cuts out except the faint backup alarm on the remote pressure panel. The sink gives one last cough of brown water and stops. That is it for tap water unless the tower retains enough head pressure for some residual line draw, and I am not counting on that. I rig the rain tarp from the truck bed over the corner of the fenced pad, where runoff can funnel into the sample jugs if the clouds break. It is not raining yet, though the air feels close. Renee wraps Mum's insulin in a thin towel, puts it inside the hard cooler, and asks what cold sauce we have once the clinic packs warm. The answer is bad. Ice from a store freezer, if any is left. Melt water from vending machines. A basement somewhere cooler than outside. None of it lasts long. She says we keep the cooler shut, open it only when needed, and hope the night air buys us time. Toward evening, a box truck grinds up the ridge road and stops at the chain gate. 3 men get out. One is broad across the shoulders with a contractor's radio clipped to his belt. He bangs the gate with a flashlight and calls up that he wants to talk. I stay behind the blind and do not answer at first. Then he says his name is Daryl Venn, and he is organizing the people on the lower blocks near the warehouse strip. He says he has families, old people, and men on watch. He says the tower road is public maintenance access, not my private camp. He wants water and wants to know how many are inside. I tell him through the closed window that the sink is dry and he can take his questions back downhill. He looks straight toward the building, not at the tower, and smiles in a way I do not trust. Then he says, we can do this the easy way now, or the hard way later. He does not try the gate then. He gets back in the truck and leaves. The threat hangs around after the engine noise fades. Jace asks if Daryl will come back with more men. I say yes. No use softening it. Mum says we should have gone to the arena when Kira told us. Renee says the arena will break the minute one person collapses in a crowd, and gets back up before anyone clears the room. Mum says, "That sounds extreme." Renee looks at her and says she watched it happen in triage. The room gets quiet after that. Around sunset, the rain starts. Light at first, then steady enough to drum on the tarp and fill the first jug. We move every container we have under the edges. I add a clean cloth as a first-pass filter to catch grit and leaf trash. Jace keeps checking the road. Holly sits with the cooler between her knees, as if holding it will keep the medicine cold. We go to the arena at first light the next day, not for safety, but for information and a chance at supplies. Mum has barely touched food and is fading into the chair between insulin checks. Holly is developing a cough from sleeping in the dust and damp. Jace has not stopped scanning every window and corner since I picked him up. The ridge can hide us for a while, but it cannot feed us long. I park 2 streets away from the civic center, and we walk the last part with the cooler wrapped in a blanket so it does not draw eyes. The arena parking lot is full of cars, county vans, carts, coolers, and people standing in lines that do not stay lines for long. Daryl is near the main intake lane with 4 men from the box truck, collecting so-called contributions before people reach the door. Kira is down the line trying to separate a fight over diapers and bottled water. The whole place smells like exhaust, wet clothes, and old panic. Inside is worse. The lights are on from generator power, but half the building is dark behind closed hallway doors. The floor of the concourse is lined with families sitting on blankets, luggage, coats, and flattened boxes. Someone set up a registration table near the ticket windows, though the forms are already pointless. No one can verify names, addresses, or medical history when the phones are dead and the staff keeps changing. Volunteers are handing out crackers, small water cups, and numbered wristbands that mean nothing once the crowd surges. The bathrooms are backed up. I can smell it from halfway down the hall. Renee pulls me aside and says the air in here is bad already, and it has not even been fully packed for a day. I tell her 10 minutes. We get what we can and leave. We head for the aid table. A county nurse gives Mom 2 more pen needles and a packet of glucose gel, then says the insulin reserve is gone. The collapse starts 3 sections over, and at first it looks like nothing more than another old man fainting in a long line. He goes down near the cots by the lower stairwell. 2 volunteers kneel. One tries chest compressions. Another shouts for a medic. People gather in a circle the way people always do when something happens, and they want to help or watch. Kira starts pushing them back. Renee sees it turning before I do. She grabs my sleeve and tells me to move Mum now. The old man's legs jerk once. Then he sits halfway up with a motion so abrupt it throws the volunteer backward. He does not look at the medic kneeling by his shoulder. He latches onto the nearest arm and drags himself forward. The crowd does the rest. 1 scream turns into 10. The line folds in on itself. People shove hard enough to drop strollers and bags. Somebody hits the alarm bar on a side exit, and the sharp horn makes every head turn. I do not try to make sense of the whole arena. I make a small path and hold it. 1 hand on Mum's elbow. 1 hand pushing the blanket-wrapped cooler into Holly's arms and telling her not to lose it. Jace stays on Holly's shoulder and keeps her moving. Renee is behind us, yelling once to Kira that the back-loading dock is the only exit with room to breathe. Kira points without looking, wrestling a metal barricade across the concourse to block the surge from the lower stairwell. Somebody falls near my feet. A man reaches up and grabs my pant leg. I kick free and keep moving. That sounds cruel even in my own head, but stopping there turns 5 people into a pile. We cut through a service corridor that smells like stale beer and mop water, shove through a crash bar door, and come out onto the loading dock where forklifts used to unload concert gear. 2 workers are dragging pallets to the edge to block the outside ramp. I help them shove 1 pallet sideways, then we slip through the gap and run. We make it back to the truck with the dock alarm still blaring behind us. The parking lots around the arena are already cracking apart into separate fights, panicked departures, and people running in every direction once the word spreads that something broke loose inside. I see Daryl once through the windshield as I pull out. He is standing on the hood of a sedan, shouting at his own men to hold the line and keep supplies from walking off. He is not trying to help the families near the entrance. He is guarding what he thinks he owns. He points toward my truck as we pass. Not at me, at the blanket in Holly's lap and the medical bag by Renee's feet. One of his men starts toward us. I cut across the curb, slide around a city bus, and get out onto Grant before he reaches the lane. Kira appears in the road a second later, waving cars away from the main doors and forcing the traffic stream apart. I do not take the Ridge Road this time. Daryl now knows where we are likely headed if he knows anything about city maintenance property, and a man like him pays attention to patterns. I cut west, then north, circling through side streets until I reach the old service road behind the abandoned reservoir grounds. There is another municipal structure there, lower than the tower and harder to spot from the street. A concrete service shed built into the slope near the old equalization basin, with a fenced equipment yard behind it, and a drainage culvert that runs down toward the river. I have been inside twice in the last year for valve checks. The building is small, ugly, and damp. It is also lower profile than a tower on a hill, and closer to cover if we need to move unseen. The front has no obvious signage. The yard fence is hidden by brush from the street. If the lock still holds, it is a better long-term choice than the ridge once people start looking uphill for resources. The lock does hold. I get us inside and move fast. The shed has one main room with a desk, wall maps, a floor drain, a utility sink with no pressure, and a door to the back equipment cage. The air is cooler than outside, which buys us more time for the insulin. The drawback shows up at once. The basement damp means mold in the corners, wet concrete, and no clean place to sleep until I clear the floor. We unload in silence, and I set the first new rule before the gear even hits the desk. No voices above a normal speaking level in this building, ever. Sound will bounce in here and carry out the vent stack. I find a stack of old tarps, scrub a corner of the floor with stored water and rags, and make a sleeping area by the back fence door. Jace checks the outer yard and says there is only one real approach from the street if we keep the brush pulled tight over the fence gap. That afternoon I go back out with Renee and no one else. Mum argues. I tell her our food is down to bars, crackers, and what a shelter line throws at us. We need dry goods, containers, blankets, and anything we can get without going near the highway or the arena again. We hit a neighborhood dollar store first and find it stripped clean except for canned beets, party napkins, and cheap toys left scattered in the aisle. The next stop is a small church pantry. The front windows are broken, but the rear storage room still has a few bags of rice, dried beans, shelf-stable milk, and a case of canned green beans nobody bothered to take. We also find a hand-crank lantern and 2 boxes of trash liners. On the way back to the truck, a woman steps out from between parked cars with a kitchen knife and tells us to leave 1 bag. She is holding the knife with white knuckles and shaking hard. I give her the canned green beans and back away. We are almost clear when the noise from the church bell tower starts. It is not the bell. It is the side door slamming in the wind after somebody left it unlatched. Each bang is hard and regular. 2 figures appear at the far end of the lot and turn toward the sound. Then a third comes through the alley. All 3 move faster once they key on the noise. The woman with the knife sees them and bolts without looking at us again. Renee is already at the passenger door. I throw the bags into the bed, get in, and drive out through the grass instead of backing around the lot. One of the figures reaches the curb and slams both hands onto the side of the truck as we pass. The metal dents under the hit. I do not slow to check whether the hand stays attached or not. We do not speak until we are 3 blocks away. Then Renee says in a flat voice that crowds, bells, alarms, engines, and arguments are making maps for the infected faster than any radio could. When we get back to the reservoir shed, Kira Bell is waiting inside the yard with her patrol SUV hidden behind the equipment fence and the brush pulled back into place. Jace let her in after she gave her badge number through the fence and named the exact street where I picked up the kids. She looks rough. Her left sleeve is torn. She has a deep scrape down one cheek and dried blood on the cuff, though I do not see a bite. She says she washed the scrape 3 times and wrapped her forearm after an old woman in a stairwell grabbed at her belt. She also says both bridges are done for now. The highway bridge is blocked with burned wrecks and a tractor trailer turned sideways near the center. The old bridge is a wall of abandoned cars, broken guardrail, and bodies no one can safely clear. She says the county command post moved twice and may not exist anymore. She is out of patrol gas and out of clean orders. I ask her about Daryl. She says he started with a few contractors from his renovation crew and now has around a dozen men rotating through the warehouse strip, the feed store block, and 3 houses near the old mill. He keeps saying he is protecting families, but he is also seizing food, fuel, medicine, and tools from anyone who cannot stop him. He is careful about direct force when a witness is nearby. He prefers pressure, control, and picking off isolated people. Kira says he tried to pressure the arena volunteers before the panic and started stealing intake supplies the minute the county staff lost the floor. She came here for 2 reasons. First, she needs a place to park the SUV and sleep for an hour without waking to a crowd. Second, she says if Daryl figures out we have water storage, medical supplies, or city access keys, he will come with more men and fewer polite words. That night, I go to the old bridge on foot with Luis after he finally leaves the plant. He reaches the reservoir shed after dark in a city truck with one headlight out, face grey with exhaustion, smelling of river water and machine oil. He says the last intake screen jammed with debris and the plant can limp along on backup flow for a while. Then it will fail whether anyone is there or not. He left the site locked and took what he could carry. We wait until the neighborhood quiets, then use the drainage culvert behind the shed to move low toward the river. The culvert stinks, but it hides movement from the street. We come out under the rail embankment and work our way toward the old bridge approach. Kira was not exaggerating. The bridge is a wreck field. Cars sit bumper to bumper, sideways, half on the sidewalk, some with doors open, some burned, some crushed into each other where panicked drivers climbed curbs and failed. A bus is angled across both lanes near the center. There is no crossing a diabetic woman and a 12-year-old girl through that mess in the dark. Not with the infected moving between the cars every time a door bangs, or a loose piece of sheet metal knocks in the wind. The river below is high from last week's rain. The banks are slick. The only other route that even looks possible is the freight trestle downstream, and that is a narrow service path along the rail line, with open gaps and no railing in stretches. Luis says people will try it anyway. He points to 2 bodies on the far bank caught against the riprap, where the current pushed them after a fall. We crouch behind a stripped sedan and watch one man try to cross from the west end with a backpack and no flashlight. He makes it only 20 yards before he steps on loose debris. The clang rings across the steel, and every shape between the cars on the bridge deck turns toward the sound at once. He backs up, then runs. He does not make the far bank. We pull out before the noise spreads farther. On the way back through the culvert, Luis slips on algae-slick concrete and smashes his shin against the lip of a runoff channel. The cut is ugly and deep enough to slow him. Not teeth, metal and stone. He clenches his jaw, gets to his feet, and keeps moving. At the shed, Renee cleans the wound, flushes dirt from it, and stitches what she can with the emergency kit. She says he needs rest, dry bandage changes, and luck. Luis tells her he can give her 2 out of 3. Mum watches the whole thing with her hands folded tight around a blanket and says nothing until Renee finishes. Then she says, if the bridges are gone, we need to stop talking about leaving like it is a plan for tomorrow. The room goes quiet. She is right. The sentence lands harder than anything Daryl said at the gate. Bell Creek has turned from home into a container, and we are inside it. The next day is the first one that feels less like panic and more like a grind. That change is not a relief. Panic burns fast and clear. Grind wears a person down by inches. We set shifts. Jace watches the fence gap from dawn until midday with the binoculars I found in the shed drawer. I take midday to evening. Kira takes late watch while she still has the energy. Luis stays off his leg and keeps inventory on a legal pad. Mum handles food portions and insulin timing. Renee checks wounds, enforces hand washing, and decides what medical supplies can be spent and what must be kept sealed. Holly helps with water. We collect rain from the tarp, run it through cloth into the clean jugs, then boil small batches on a camp stove Luis brought from his truck. The stove stays in the back cage with the vent cracked and a wet towel pinned near the gap to break the light. Even the smell of hot rice makes me nervous. By afternoon, Daryl finds us again. This time, he does not come to the front fence. He sends 2 men through the alley to probe the brush line. Jace spots them first and taps my shoulder instead of shouting. We hold position in the dark of the main room and watch them through a crack near the rear hinge. One man is carrying bolt cutters. The other has a baseball bat. They whisper about the patrol SUV hidden in the yard and the city truck under the brush netting. That means they have been close enough before to look, or someone else has. The man with the bolt cutters reaches for the fence line, then jerks back when he feels the tripwire I strung low through the brush. I tied empty couplings and a strip of metal to it, not to stop him, only to make noise if he pushes through. He sees the wire and mutters to the other man that Daryl was right. Someone in here knows maintenance work. They back off and leave without touching the fence. I do not wait for a second probe. That evening, I use the last of the good daylight to make the yard harder to enter without announcing it. I move a stack of old pipe lengths behind the rear fence so any blind step will kick metal. I tie more line low across the brush gap. I wedge the back cage door so it can be secured from inside with one pull. I cut a narrow secondary exit through the brush behind the drainage run, where one person at a time can crawl out to the culvert if the front is lost. Kira watches and says, I am turning a service shed into a trap. I tell her any fixed place becomes a trap if you stay after other people understand what is inside. A better answer is not to need a fixed place. We do need one. Food, medicine, bandages, and a wounded man do not move well every night. She nods once, then says Daryl will try pressure before force. Men like him prefer easy results. That gives us a little time, not much. The pressure starts at the gas station on Clay Street. I go there with Luis the next morning for diesel from the underground tank, using the hand pump from the plant and a hose line I cut to length. The station has already been stripped of snacks, beer and cigarettes, but fuel does not walk away without equipment. We pull in through the service bay and back to stay off the road. While Luis keeps watch from the office window, I pop the tank access cover behind pump 4 and start siphoning into the cans. It is slow work. The station awning bangs now and then in the wind. Every noise makes me stop and listen. On the second can, a box truck rolls in from the street and blocks the rear exit. Daryl gets out first. He does not look surprised to see us. He looks pleased. He says city men always know where the good stuff is. He asks for the fuel, the hand pump, and the keys to any locked municipal sites I have left. I tell him the keys are useless if the lines are dry and the tanks are empty. He smiles and says, that is not an answer. Luis shifts his weight in the office doorway and puts one hand on the pipe wrench tucked against his leg. I shake my head once, small, so Daryl does not see it. Daryl has 4 men with him, 2 by the truck and 2 drifting toward the service bay. A straight fight here ends fast and bad. Then the station awning slams hard above us. Every head turns. 2 infected appear at the front apron from the sidewalk, then another from the alley beside the ice machine. They are not coming for me or Daryl. They are coming for the repeated metal crash. I grab the nearest full can, swing it into the truck bed, and tell Luis move. We do not ask permission. Daryl shouts for his men to hold us. Then one of the infected reaches the first pump island, and the line between intimidation and panic breaks at once. Luis gets the passenger door open. I jump in, slam the truck into reverse, and clip the side mirror on Daryl's box truck to clear the bay. The hand pump is lost. One fuel can makes it with us. Another spills half across the concrete and goes over. In the mirror, I see one of Daryl's men shove another aside to get back into the truck first, while the infected hit the edge of the awning shadows. Daryl is yelling, but he is yelling at his own side now, not at me. We clear the lot and take 2 hard turns before I slow. Luis laughs once, not from humor, more from relief and exhaustion mixed together. Then he winces and presses his stitched leg. The wound has bled through again. When we get back to the shed, Renee unwraps it and says the sutures pulled on one edge. She restitches what she can and tells him if he keeps running errands on it, she will not waste more thread next time. He tells her if I go out alone, I come back with less. That evening the weather cools, which helps the insulin and hurts everything else. Cooler nights drive people into tighter groups and tighter groups into worse decisions. We hear arguments on the block above the basin. We hear glass break. We hear one burst of fast gunfire from near the mill, then a long silence after. Holly wakes from a light sleep and asks if the sick people get cold. Renee says they do not care about cold the way healthy people do, but damaged muscles slow down over time, and bare feet on broken pavement take a toll on anyone. It is the most hopeful sentence I have heard in a while, and it is not much. Mom gives Holly half her blanket and tells her to sleep near the cooler. Jace asks if we can go back to his aunt's place now that the streets are less crowded. I tell him no. He gets angry for the first time. Not loud, but sharp. He says maybe his aunt waited for him. I tell him maybe she did. Then I tell him if I take him there and we cannot get out, Holly loses him too. The next morning, Kira leaves to check the courthouse annex where the sheriff parked emergency radios on the first night. She says if one of those units still works, she can scan wider bands and figure out whether any organized line exists outside town. She takes the patrol SUV and half a gallon of fuel from our remaining stash. I hate letting fuel go. I let it go anyway. While she is out, I make a hard choice I have been avoiding. Water gives us leverage, and leverage cuts both ways. The old reservoir zone still has manual valves tied into the upper district pressure control, even if the pumps are failing elsewhere. If Daryl's block loses what little line pressure remains while ours retains collected rain and stored jugs, he will either assume we did it or start tearing through every municipal box in range trying to fix it. If I do nothing, he keeps circling until he finds a softer point. If I shift the valve now, I may force him into the open before he is ready. I take the service map from the wall and study it until the lines settle in my head. Renee watches me tracing the map and asks what I am planning. I tell her the lower warehouse strip and the mill houses are fed through a pressure-reducing branch tied off the old service manifold behind the basin. The manual wheel valve at the split can be cut back without dropping every line on our side. She says if I touch anything tied to live water, I need to be sure, not hopeful. I tell her I am sure enough to know what the wheel does, not sure enough to promise clean results. Mum tells me not to start a water war with a bully who already wants our food and medicine. I say the bully already started it. He is choosing his pace. I would rather choose mine once if I can. Luis says he can help from the map if his leg stays planted. Renee gives me one look that says she dislikes the whole idea, then hands me gloves and says if I get blood on me from any fight tied to this, I do not come back inside until she clears me. The valve pit is 40 yards from the shed, hidden under a metal cover half buried in weeds behind the old basin retaining wall. That is one reason I picked this site. Most people walk past it and see only brush and cracked concrete. I pry the cover up with the sledge handle while Jace keeps watch from the brush slit. The wheel below is stiff from neglect, but it turns after steady pressure. I close it by increments, counting the turns under my breath and stopping short of full shutoff. If the diagram is accurate, Daryl's block will get weaker flow within the hour, while the upper branch retains some residual head. It is not a clean weapon. It is a pressure point. I reset the cover, brush the dirt back over the edges, and head inside. Then all we do is wait. About 90 minutes later, shouting starts somewhere downhill. Not panic, anger, repeated, focused. Jace peeks through the brush and says, 3 men are kicking at a curbside valve box on clay. Daryl comes himself after sunset. No note. No polite call from the road. He comes to the front fence with 6 men, lights off, moving in from 2 directions. The tripwire on the rear brush line snaps first. Pipe lengths clatter against the fence and wake the whole shed at once. I push Mum and Holly into the back cage with the cooler and tell Jace to stay low at the floor gap where he can see the rear fence feet. Luis plants himself by the inner door with the pipe wrench and the short sledge. Renee takes the lantern and keeps it dark in the medical corner, so no one silhouettes in the front room. Daryl hits the outer latch with something heavy. The chain holds the first strike, bends on the second, and tears free on the third. He does not rush in. He wants us to hear how many boots are outside. He calls out that he only wants the medicine and fuel, and nobody needs to get hurt if I open the door. I do not answer from the front room. I pull the cord I rigged from the inner bracket to the scrap pile stacked near the back brush line. Metal crashes in the yard behind the shed. Daryl's men split their attention at once, exactly as I hoped. 2 peel off toward the back fence. One shines a light through the broken front latch into the dark office and sees nothing but the desk. He steps in. I am waiting to the hinge side with the fire door pulled half open as cover. When he enters, I slam the heavy door edge into his forearm and wrench the flashlight out of his hand before it hits the floor. He stumbles back outside, cursing. Luis drives the inner bolt on the second door shut. Daryl realizes we have a layered entry and changes tactics. He sends his men around the sides. probing for windows, vents, anything softer. The shed has 2 narrow high windows and both are caged. That buys us time, not victory. Then another sound enters the mix, one I did not create. An engine starts hard and rough from the street above the basin. Somebody left a truck in gear or rigged an old remote starter badly. It revs 3 times, dies, catches again, and then the horn jams on. The blast carries across the low blocks and straight through the yard. Every person outside the shed freezes for 1 second listening. Daryl curses loud enough for me to hear every word. From the brush behind the fence comes the first scrape of feet that are not his men's. Then another from the front. Sound changes the map fast in this town. He knows it, and so do I. Daryl shouts for his crew to clear out and regroup by the alley. One of his men is too slow. He rounds the rear corner right as a pair of infected push through the brush line drawn by the horn and the clatter from our trap. His flashlight arcs upward and disappears into the dark. I do not open the inner door to watch. I listen, boots running, fence rattling. One man yelling for the gate, another voice cutting him off in a short burst. Then the horn from the street keeps blaring, steady and dumb, and impossible to ignore. More impacts hit the outer wall, not from tools now, from bodies pressing toward the noise and any movement around it. We stay still. That part is harder than fighting. Mum is in the back cage with one hand over Holly's mouth. Jace is flat against the floor, eyes locked on the gap under the rear door. Luis grips the sledge so hard his bad leg starts trembling. Renee stands by the wash bucket with gloves on and a towel over one shoulder, ready for blood or dirt or whatever comes through the door if it fails. The outer room takes 3 hard hits, then quiets. 10 more minutes pass before the horn stops. The silence after feels heavier than the noise. We hold our position another full hour. When I finally crack the inner door and shine the stolen flashlight into the office, the front room is wrecked but intact. The desk is overturned. One filing cabinet is tipped. The outer latch hangs twisted from the jam. There is blood on the floor near the doorway and a dropped crowbar by the wall. Outside the yard fence, the brush is flattened in 2 lanes where bodies shoved through and got tangled. I do not look for details beyond that. Daryl is gone. Most of his crew is gone. Whether they ran, got cornered in the alley, or dragged one another into the box truck, does not change the fact that he now knows a direct breach is noisy, costly, and uncertain. We reset what we can before dawn. Sleep does not come. When daylight arrives, I step into the yard and see the patrol SUV gone. Kira is back only an hour later, on foot, carrying the radio unit from the annex in a duffel and breathing hard from the climb. She says the courthouse annex got hit in the night. She reached the lot after sunrise, found 1 deputy truck burned out and 2 radios smashed. 1 unit in a duffel case still works on battery, though half the channels are dead air. The useful part is not good news. She caught fragments from farther north and east. Town names, road closures, requests for aid nobody answered. One voice saying, "Do not bring civilians to the county line checkpoint unless they are cleared and contained." Another voice saying the checkpoint is abandoned. Bell Creek is not the only place that broke. The map outside our town is not blank, but it is torn and unreliable. Kira sets the radio on the desk and says, if we are waiting for an orderly sweep to restore the streets, we can stop waiting. Mom sits down after hearing that and stares at the floor for a long time. Then she stands again, opens the rice bag, and starts measuring dinner portions with the broken cup from the shelf. We do not turn into heroes after that. We turn into a schedule. That is the closest thing to control available. Morning water collection if rain hits. Midday quiet with no movement near the street. Short supply runs at first light or the last clean edge of evening, never both in one day. 2 people out, minimum. 1 person on the fence. 1 on the door. 1 with Mum and Holly, no exceptions. Shoes on at all times. Bandages burned in a metal bin outside the culvert mouth once the ash can be buried under wet silt. Food portions weighed by sight and hand, not appetite. The cooler checked only when Mum needs the pen. When one problem shows up, we solve the immediate part, then the next consequence, then the one after that. The town does not improve. It only changes shape. Fires burn out. New ones start. The sick move slower in some areas and cluster harder in others where noise keeps calling them back. On the 5th day, Luis tries to stand too quickly, and his stitched leg gives out under him. The wound is hot and the skin around it has gone tight. Renee says, infection, not the turning kind. The ordinary kind that used to mean a clinic visit and a prescription and a week of limping. She gives him one of the antibiotics and says we have to save the rest for a worst-case wound. He laughs at the phrase and asks what she thinks this is. She does not laugh back. We clean the cut again, and I take over his watch shift without comment. That afternoon, while checking the culvert route, I find 2 plastic totes wedged under the rail embankment where floodwater pushed them days earlier. One is cracked and useless. The other holds damp but salvageable cafeteria supplies from some storage run that never got finished. Sealed oatmeal packets, powdered drink mix, paper bowls, and a bundle of plastic cutlery. It feels like a jackpot until I carry it back and realize how low the bar has dropped. On the 6th day, I see Daryl again. Not up close. Through the binoculars from the brush slit, across Clay Street near the warehouse strip. He is moving slower and favoring one shoulder. He has only 3 men with him. 2 houses he had been using as intake points are dark and empty. The box truck is parked crooked with one rear door missing. He is not done, but he is reduced. That makes him more dangerous, not less. A man losing ground reaches harder for what he thinks he can still take. I tell Kira if he comes back, I do not want another fence test. I want him pulled away from us and into a place where noise will do the work for once. She asks if I have a plan or anger. I tell her both, and the plan matters more. Behind the feed warehouse on Clay, there is a chain gate leading into an enclosed loading yard with stacked pallets and one narrow exit to the service alley. I have keys for that gate. We set it up at dusk. No speeches, no dramatic argument, only assignments. Kira and I go out through the culvert with the radio battery and a length of wire. The battery is for the truck horn on an abandoned delivery van parked nose-in by the warehouse fence line. I rig the horn circuit closed with the stripped wire so it will start blaring once the leads touch and stay on until the battery drains or the connection breaks. Kira loops wide to the street corner where Daryl usually posts a lookout near dark. Her job is to be seen, then not be caught. Mine is to make the yard look like a weak supply point with one unlocked gate and noise inside. It is ugly work. It depends on a man doing what he has done every day this week when he smells an advantage. I prop the chain gate open, drag 2 empty water jugs into view, and hide behind the stack of pallet wraps near the latch post. Kira does her part. I hear shouting at the corner, then boots on the service alley gravel. Daryl's voice cuts through once. He has seen her and thinks he can pin down a lone officer carrying gear. The first 2 men rush past the chain gate without looking at the yard. Daryl is a few steps behind, pushing hard to keep pace. When he sees the open gate and the jugs, he does exactly what I hoped. He peels off into the loading yard, expecting to find hidden supplies or a second person waiting inside. I yank the gate shut behind him and throw the chain through as he turns. He slams into the metal so hard the links jump in my hands. One of his men reaches the opening before I can lock the clasp, but Kira hits him from the alley side with the patrol baton, and he stumbles back into the horn wire I already tied under the delivery van hood. The horn erupts at full blast. The whole block wakes up to that sound. Daryl is screaming at me through the gate, hands through the chain link, trying to grab my sleeve. I snap the padlock closed, kick his fingers off the latch line, and move. Not running wild, moving with a route already chosen. Kira is 3 steps behind me, and we cut through the side alley toward the culvert opening. Behind us, boots scatter. One man keeps pace with us for half the alley, then a crash from the street ahead makes him turn. The horn keeps going. It pulls everything in the radius with working ears and enough balance to follow movement. By the time I glance back once from the culvert lip, shapes are already converging on the loading yard fence from 2 directions, drawn toward the van, the shouting, the impacts on metal. Daryl beats on the inner chain, but the yard stacks and the narrow turn at the exit force him to lose seconds he cannot afford. I drop into the culvert and keep moving. We wait in the culvert under the dark lip of the embankment until the horn cuts off on its own. That takes longer than I want. Long enough for the whole alley system above us to shift into a new pattern of shouting, metal strikes, and then scattered movement as people either clear out or get caught where they chose to stand. Kira never asks if Daryl makes it out. I never ask her the same. We crawl back to the shed one at a time, with mud on our hands and damp grit in our clothes. Renee makes us strip outer layers in the yard, checks for blood, checks our faces, our sleeves, our hands, the cuffs of our pants, and only then lets us back inside. Mum is awake, sitting at the desk with the radio on low. Holly is asleep against the cooler. Jace is staring at the door hard enough to wear a hole through it. When he sees us come in, he sits down so fast he nearly misses the chair. The next morning is quieter than any morning since the first night. Not safe. Quiet. There is a difference. No truck circles the block. No note at the door. No probe at the brush line. Clay Street has less movement. The men who used to post at the warehouse corner are gone. I do not use the quiet to relax. I use it to move us. The reservoir shed worked while pressure and uncertainty hid us. Daryl knows this block now. If he survives and drags himself back together, he will remember every hinge and fence line around this place. There is one final site I kept in mind from the first day, and did not use since it offered less room but better concealment. A buried utility vault under the old park storage lot behind the closed tennis courts, with a concrete access room, thick doors, no windows, and a service crawl space tied into a storm drain for emergency exit. It was built for equipment theft prevention, not people, but that suits me fine. We move in 2 trips before noon. The first trip carries the cooler, medical bag, food, radio, and Mum. The second carries tools, water jugs, blankets, and the people who can walk faster. The patrol SUV stays behind with no fuel. The city truck stays too. Vehicles drew eyes long before the town broke. The utility vault is tighter than the shed, but it is dry, cool, and hidden behind a locked chain gate overgrown with hedges. The access door is below grade under a slab lid that most people assume covers drainage. Once we are in, I lower the lid and leave only the small vent gap and the storm drain crawl route as exits. It is not comfort. It is a box with concrete walls and cleaner air than the moldy shed. Renee checks the insulin and says the cooler has held longer than she expected. Mum opens the rice bag, counts what is left, and starts building a new ration list on the back of an old park's inventory form. By evening, I sit on the narrow steps below the vault door with the radio turned low enough that only I can hear it from the top landing. The channels are patchy. Most of what comes through is static, partial calls, clipped road numbers, and tired voices asking for help in places I cannot reach. Once in a while, a clear sentence gets through. Hold your position, avoid crowds, conserve fuel, screen all injuries. Nothing in those sentences changes what we do down here. Our world has narrowed to water, medicine, sleep, noise, entry points, waste, and the next run for food that does not get us boxed in. Bell Creek is my hometown. I know its roads, culverts, fence lines, pump houses, and bad corners better than I ever wanted to. Now that knowledge is the thin line between a place I grew up in and the place that can bury us if I make one lazy choice. I close the radio, check the lid, and go back down to the others. Nobody says we are safe. Nobody says we made it. Those are the sort of phrases people used in the first hours when they still thought this was one bad night. We do not talk that way now. We count water. We rotate the insulin. We wash cuts fast. We keep shoes on. We listen before opening anything. We let bad sounds pass if they are not at our door. We move only when the gain is worth the risk. Jace stops asking when he can go home. Holly coughs less after 2 dry nights in the vault. Luis can stand on his leg again for short stretches, and that feels close enough to good news to hold for a day. Kira sleeps with the baton across her lap and the radio battery at her feet. Mum folds and refolds the same blanket when she cannot rest, then catches herself and stops to save the fabric from wearing thin. I lie down on concrete with my boots near my hands and keep the route to the lid fixed in my head.